And they've done stories you could say are like that's the whole service. And so let me make sense. So have any further after that. So there was whatever transaction, and she was a person, and they're saying it wasn't a car, like and then like we're charging and so he was like, and then
good evening, everybody.
And then he was like,
just real quick, can the Zoom people hear me? Put it in the chat or somebody give me a thumbs up. Can't see anybody, so I'm gonna hope they can hear me. Before we get started, real quick housekeeping. If you need to use the restroom, please use that door that's open right there. You can go right through that side, and it's all the way around the back. So for those in person, but we're going to go ahead and kick off tonight's meeting. I want to welcome everybody. My name is Sean King, and I have the honor of serving as the chair of the Pinellas Continuum of Care, also known as the COC. And it is my pleasure to welcome you tonight to the kickoff membership meeting. Before we get started, I'd first like to thank Allendale United Methodist and specifically Pastor Andy for hosting us not only for this event tonight, but also several meetings of the COC throughout the year. They have been a gracious host through the pandemic when other venues have been closed. So we want to thank them for their support of the COC throughout the pandemic. Secondly, I want to thank the HLA staff, fellow COC board members, the COC membership for all your efforts throughout the year in moving the needle and ensuring we're moving the needle in the right direction. Last, but certainly not least, I want to express my gratitude for all the direct service providers, the advocates, the current or formerly homeless individuals, and the community members who've dedicated their time to serving our most vulnerable members of society. Tonight, let's all come together to end homelessness. Whether you're attending in person or on Zoom, we, as the Pinellas Continuum of Care, are excited to work with you. We have an impactful evening filled with information, inspiration, and all the ways you can help reach the goal of ending homelessness within our community. As a coalition of nonprofits, the public sector, and local business and community leaders, we strive to make homelessness rare, brief, and one time. We cannot do this work in silos. So again, on behalf of the Pinellas Continuum of Care Board, we thank you for being a part of this evening and your willingness to work to end homelessness within our community. With that, I will turn it over to HOA CEO, Ms. Amy Foster.
Thanks, Sean, and thanks everybody for being here. It's great to see so many familiar faces as well as new faces tonight. So for some of you, some of the information we're going to share may be a repeat, but I've learned that even if you've been involved with the Continuum of Care for 10 years, many people still struggle to understand what's the difference between the COC and what does the HLA do. So we're going to do a very brief introduction about what the purpose of the Continuum of Care is, and then how the HLA works to accomplish our goals. So for many of you, you know that the Continuum of Care exists because it is something that is required by HUD, which stands for, we use a lot of acronyms, so stop me tonight if I use something you're not familiar with. Housing and Urban Development. But it is all of you in the room tonight. So it's a diverse group of organizations, businesses, and individuals who care about ending homelessness. And again, that's why we're so excited to have some new faces join our group. And we work together to promote a community-wide response to homelessness. So that means, you know, in the last couple of years, we've been working hard with our funders, with providers to understand what are the unique needs that are presenting during the pandemic? How can we align resources and respond to those things? And then we also develop and implement a long-term plan to end homelessness. So a couple of years ago, I feel like it was probably around 2013, some of my first involvement in the Continuum of Care, we started using this term housing first in Pinellas County. We just recently had a review of what's going on at Safe Harbor. Safe Harbor said we were housing first before housing first was a thing. And the easiest way for us to describe to you what housing first is that it's the belief that everyone is housing ready in our community. That means you don't have to get sober first. You don't have to agree to services. You have personal agency. And we believe that everybody deserves to live in a home. And as Sean already shared with you, we are on a mission here to make homelessness rare, brief, and a one-time experience. So who is the HLA and what do we do? So we do a lot of different things, but I didn't want to spend all your time tonight talking about what we do, because again, it's about everybody else that's in the room. We can't do this work without all of the great providers that are here tonight. So I'll just briefly talk about our role. If I had to put it in a couple of big buckets, I would say that we convene folks. So April Lott, the CEO of Directions for Living, often sits in meetings and says, in one of the 80 meetings I've attended this month, and she's not wrong, right? So it takes a lot of work to bring people together. Providers are working to figure out, you know, what are the gaps in services that they need to advocate for? What are the policies that are needed to make sure clients are kept safe and in clean and affordable housing? What do funders need to meet together about to align resources and make sure that all the resources that are available in our community go to ending homelessness? And then we also convene people with lived experience who may need to inform what our assessment should look like moving forward. That's something we're working on right now, and others to address the issues that we are facing. We also work as educators. So that's not only educating the community about the issue, helping change the face of homelessness. You're going to hear later tonight from some amazing clients who have overcome huge hurdles during the pandemic, thanks to our providers. And, you know, we really want folks to know that it is not what you may picture in your mind when you think about homelessness here in Pinellas County. So sometimes we're working with the community to help them understand who's really being impacted. We also work with our providers to help them understand how to navigate this very complicated system, as well as clients themselves so that they can navigate the complicated system. And then probably the most important part of our work when you think about going upstream is the importance of advocacy. So things like the Tenants' Bill of Rights, helping our state understand how important it is to draw down funds from the federal government and get those programs into our communities, and other advocacy issues that may present itself. That is one of the things that the HLA does. Because we are required to do certain things by HUD, we wanted to mention that we are also the collaborative applicant, the lead agency, and the HMIS administrator. For those of you who are not familiar with HMIS, that stands for the Homeless Management Information System. It's basically the big database that allows us to share someone's journey through the system so that they don't have to tell their story over and over again. We do provide some services. So for those of you who have been involved in the system for a long time, you may remember that there was a long time belief that the continuum of care should not provide services. That's evolved a little bit over the last couple of years. We maintain that we only provide services when they make sense to be provided at the system level. So that means that it's better at the system rather than with individual providers. So we provide prevention and diversion. So do many of our providers, but it takes all of us. So that helps keep people where they are. We also provide community navigation. That's the type of thing that helps people get document ready for housing. So when we say housing readiness, we don't mean that individual needs to be housing ready. It means they have to have the documents that the government requires in order for them to receive housing. We provide veteran services, both outreach assessment and navigation, housing location and stabilization. All of you can imagine how difficult that is at this time, and many of our providers also provide this service and are struggling to locate affordable housing for our clients. New as a part of our work with ESGCV was piloting a program to do workforce development. That program came about after our race disparity study told us that housing is great, man, but I need a job. We heard that from clients over and over and over again. And then a topic that is probably one of the most complicated things, even though it was meant to simplify our work, is coordinated entry. So that is the system that helps us help those who are most vulnerable first. But it's not as seamless as we'd like it to be. So we'll keep working to make coordinated entry more nimble. So with that, I'm going to provide a brief state of the state. We know that we have some policymakers who've joined us, as well as funders and other providers. And we wanted for everybody to kind of understand, where are we at in Pinellas County right now? So you'll hear us in meetings often talk about system flow. We need to make the system flow. And I really like this graphic that helps you think about, we can all picture roundabouts, Clearwater Beach, other areas, right? And anytime there's a clog in the roundabout, the system doesn't work. And so we work to create an efficient and coordinated process that moves people from one place to the next. And this is supposed to happen as quickly as possible. And so when you think about that, improvements in one lane can create improvements overall. So later, we're going to talk about a bunch of different interventions that are available in our continuum of care. And one of the things that funders really struggle with every year when we have to decide what are the priorities, they say it's hard to pick the priorities. We need everything, right? But one of the things that we are learning as we map our system and understand flow is how different levers change different things, right? We could build more shelter, but that just puts people into shelter. Is there a need for shelter? Yes. A strategy that may impact the entire system is investing more in rapid rehousing. If there's more rapid rehousing, people get into permanent housing, shelters empty out because there's more exits for people to get out of shelter. And sometimes even folks that need permanent supportive housing may be able to be successful in rapid rehousing. So that's just one example of how system flow can impact us overall. So we talk a lot about equity in our community, and we have an entire committee. A lot of great folks that are in this room participate in our diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. But these terms are really important to us as a system. We want effective, efficient, and equitable systems. We need to divert people from homelessness whenever possible. We need to house people that become homeless as quickly as possible. And again, make homelessness rare, brief, and one time. Over the pandemic, you can imagine that housing people as quickly as possible has become more and more challenging. I want to say that pre-pandemic, that was about 60 days it took us to rehouse folks. And right now it's at about 97. So we're going in the wrong direction. But these are challenges that aren't faced just by our community here in Pinellas, but across the country. We are also responsible to make sure that people in a housing crisis have access to immediate help. They should never be unsheltered. They shouldn't be homeless for long periods of time. And when we help people exit homelessness quickly, they shouldn't return. So we just talked about how no one should ever be unsheltered. But I'm sad to report to you today that there are 57 families in our community that are currently waiting for shelter. This problem got so bad last year that we developed an entire system and flow for our homeless families, knowing that we would not have enough space for them in shelter. The school system knows of even more than we do, 107 families that they know are in public spaces. But when they look at families that are doubled up or in hotel, that's over 4,000 families. It's the highest it's ever been in our community. I just did a version of this presentation last month for the Suncoast League of Cities. When I did this last month, our average monthly inflow was 10 to 15. This month, that average has gone up to 20 to 25. So even though we've had new programs begin that have gotten some family into shelter, thanks to the city of St. Pete and their funding for non-congregate shelter, this number has not drastically reduced. And the average length of stay in shelter is 97 days. So you can imagine that these 57 families that are waiting are going to be waiting for some time. The thing that worries me the most about these families is that more than 50% have never touched our system before. And we need to be talking about that. So these are folks who are not used to navigating our services, who never expected to need our support. And so that is an entirely different client than some of us may be familiar with and used to working with. I also wanted to mention, thinking about our equity work, even though it wasn't on the last slide, that the updated census numbers show that approximately 11% of our population here in Pinellas County is Black or African American. But 71% of the homeless families that we serve here in Pinellas County are Black. And so there's a huge equity issue and a disparity that we have to continue to address and go upstream to figure out how to solve. So the Corporation for Supportive Housing released this great report this year. This is just a snapshot of some of those numbers. I'm not going to read this off to you, but I am going to describe the difference between the two. So supportive units, for those who aren't familiar with that term, is units with services wrapped into it. So the types of units needed here also need services. There's 841 people here in Pinellas who need that type of unit. And then for affordable units, there's a gap of almost just over 3,000. You hear a lot if you sit and listen to any council meeting in our county. You hear people talk about the missing middle, the missing middle. We've got to worry about the missing middle. I really wanted to present this slide for our policymakers in the room to understand that there is no such thing as the missing middle. The real gap here is housing for very low income. So you can see that for our community, we have more than enough units for every 100 households who are making 100% AMI. But when we start looking at 80%, 50%, 30%, you see that there's a huge gap in those resources. Now, of course, it's a ladder. So it means, we've got to have all housing types so people can move up the ladder. But where we need to concentrate our efforts is for those lower income individuals. Next slide. So when we look at all the affordable units needed in the Tampa Bay area, it's 156,000. This comes at a substantial cost, much more than any community has. We've, as a COC, really praised the work of the city of St. Pete for allocating all 45 million of their ARPA dollars towards housing and equity programs. But I want to say it's 7.7 billion needed to cover the affordable units and more than 800 million to cover the need for supportive service units just here in Pinellas County. So I need that to sink in for everybody for just a minute, right? This problem's only going to get worse. And we're already talking about billions, not millions, in order to solve the problem. So this is another statistic that I think it's really important for us to understand. Oftentimes we talk to folks who want to help, but they kind of have this idea about they want to help those who want to help themselves and how families find themselves in this predicament. But for a family to not be cost burdened here in Pinellas County, they would have to make almost $70,000. $70,000, and that went up more than 30% from last year. Okay, so I think we're going to talk about other interventions. We're going to talk a little bit about prevention. So prevention, we know, is less traumatizing for clients, especially our families. And we also know that it is less costly. So we wanted you to see the difference of new clients coming into the system versus prevention. So whenever prevention goes up, the number of new clients entering the system goes down. We don't have all the numbers to show you for 2022 yet. Right before I came to this meeting, I just learned that the county's emergency rental assistance program will be ending at midnight tonight. We had no warning that that program would be ending. And so this is very real that, we're seeing this positive impact of prevention dollars in the system. And without additional supports, we will see significant challenges. So this is not a full picture for our entire community. This is a picture just for the Homeless Leadership Alliance. And if you didn't understand this data, you would say, well, that looks really wonky, right? There's this need, it's going up, and then it drops down drastically. What's going on there? So I want to tell you the story of what this data means. It means that at some point, people needed prevention, they needed prevention. And that was going up. They no longer need prevention because we can't keep them where they are. right? Landlords are not renewing leases, they're charging more. So no amount of money of being able to provide prevention support can keep people where they are. So that's why you see this drastic decline. The other thing that I think is really telling in this, so the orange line is other agencies that are reaching out to the HLA. And so that is, going up and then it goes drastically down. That's because they know it wouldn't be a good referral, right? They're not going to refer somebody to an agency knowing that prevention's not going to support them. But if you look at the light blue line, that's direct client calls. So that goes up because what our families and individuals are doing right now is they're just calling everywhere they possibly can in order to get help. So let's talk about navigation is what happens when somebody comes into the system. And this is going up. So in April, there were 146 referrals made for navigation. That means folks that called us directly that are literally homeless. We do not have a system that allows doing the VI SPDAT assessment over the phone. So this is only families in particular, but 131 of those calls came directly from people who weren't able to get help anywhere else. And only 15 of those came from other agencies. Again, knowing that there's not much more that can be done for their clients. 39 of them were disabled seniors. I really want to mention, this does not tell the whole story. If you look at 211's data, the number of seniors calling 211 is significant. We've seen a 783% increase in seniors coming into our system just in the last year. So as I just mentioned, the number of people who can be prevented or diverted is decreasing because of the severity of needs. So let's talk about what our needs are with rapid rehousing. And I think this data is also really interesting to share with you, because while you'll see there's these huge increases, 89% increase in people who need rapid rehousing, 38% increase in people who need permanent supportive housing, you also can see that the inflow over the last year has decreased. And that's only because of all of these other programs that are being funded by COVID dollars and through the emergency rental assistance that has decreased the number of people coming into our system. The other thing I wanted to point out with this slide that is new for us as a community, we have never seen 134 people who scored in the self-resolution range on the VI SPDAT. Self-resolution does not mean somebody can solve it on their own. It means they need linkage to services and referrals. But the VI SPDAT mostly measures trauma, right? So we think these are people who may have never been homeless before who are touching our system. And then this is what it looks like for families. The numbers are smaller, but still significant increases. So there are 45 families awaiting rapid rehousing right now. 7 who score in a range appropriate for permanent supportive housing. That doesn't mean they qualify for permanent supportive housing. One of the criteria for permanent supportive housing is that you have to be chronic. And so we are going to have to make people chronic in order for them to qualify for the services that they need in our community, which is a shame. And so I want to refer you back to those supportive units that were needed when we looked at those big numbers, $80 million. So I could talk about our data all night, but it is not the numbers that matter. It's the faces of those that our providers are working to serve every single day. So we wanted to start off and give you kind of the big picture, the numbers, but the next parts of tonight are the most important. You're going to get to hear from clients. You're going to get to hear from the case managers who are unsung heroes who are doing this work every day. So I'm going to wrap up by just giving you a few key takeaways. It's important for us to prevent and divert whenever possible. Everybody says, what's the answer to homelessness? Is there, a silver bullet? It's pretty simple, it's housing. ERA and other investments are making a difference, but more supports are still needed. I obviously wrote this slide. I'll be honest, I actually wrote it this morning, but I wrote it before I found out at 3 p.m. that ERA was ending tonight. So we need more supports than ever, knowing that that program will be ending. Our investments need to be concentrated for those making the least. So our lower AMI families, AMI stands for area median income. It's really important that for every entry into the system, we plan for an exit. So what I mean by that is that there's not one solution, right? We can't just go build more emergency shelter. We definitely need shelter for our families, but we got to have a way to get them out of that shelter. So we got to have more rapid rehousing as well. And then I think one of the things that is most important for us to think about is that innovative solutions are going to be required to meet the current needs. We're seeing different things in our community than we've ever seen before. So that's ways to rapidly exit people without ever going into shelter, ways for people who are in shelter to get out of shelter without rapid rehousing. And I'm sure there's many other solutions we haven't even thought of yet. So with that, I'm going to have Haley play us a video. Before she does that, I just want to say a big thank you to Directions for Living. Their marketing team put this together. We felt like it was really important for you to hear from those who are being impacted by this crisis firsthand. And they worked really hard to make this presentation so that you would have the ability to do that.
My name is Precious Wingo, and I became a DFL client back in, it was July of 2021.
My name is Leah Cazzola, and I became a client of DFL because I was struggling. I was homeless with housing and for mental health as well.
My name is Licia Whitson, and I guess I became a client almost a year.
I ended up staying at St. Vincent because of some family issues and family conflicts that caused me to have to vacate my living spaces, just because it was better for everyone. But it definitely put me in a bad position, being that I was relatively new to the state itself, let alone St. Petersburg. And so I really found myself with nowhere to turn. I had a steady job and income, but it's hard to save when you've been spending money on rent and everything was so sudden.
Evictions and family, pretty much. Trying to find affordable housing on a fixed income.
Well, due to my housing struggles, the reason I'm having housing struggles is I'm coming out of an abusive relationship, as I stated before. And when I left my paramour, I had nowhere to go but to a one-room efficiency, $300 a week. And my struggles is I'm trying to find Section 8 housing now.
Alone. Nobody really cared. I had no shoulder to cry, like, lean on. What do your parents think of you? What do your grandparents think where you should be? What life that they wanted you don't have. You don't have. And I'm taking one foot in front of the other and getting there, one step at a time, with people that I didn't expect to rely on, people that I put all my faith into, and like gave me their hand and put all their faith into me and showed me that no matter if you are down, there are people still are gonna help you. there are people out there, there are people willing to, hey, no matter what you did, no matter how you got here, we're going to get you here. And now being from there to here is a different feeling. So much better. So much weight lifted off my shoulders. It's like I'm living life again. I don't feel that I'm down. I don't feel hopeless.
I actually felt like jumping off the Skyway Bridge. I thought life was not worth living because I was so beat down and abused mentally till I thought that I was not lovable. I didn't even think my kids could love me. I didn't even think God himself loved me. And doing this program, I met some very positive people and I had a great sponsor. And they showed me my worth. And I appreciate that.
And like I said, I definitely had some low points at the shelter. I have a 2-year-old. Well, at the time he was 2, now he's 4. I had a 2-year-old with me and I was a single mom. So I definitely had a few nights where I was like crying myself to sleep and just questioning, am I a good mom? Because there were certain things I wasn't able to provide in terms of sustainability and living, obviously. So that was definitely my lowest point. But it got better from there.
My mindset, the support that I had.
My son, Prince James. That's it, period. I would not have the resiliency that I have if it wasn't for that kid. I mean, when they say like kids give you a reason not to give up, like literally, even if it's just for him, you know, there were days where I was like, I don't care if I eat, I don't care if I do this, I don't care if I do that. But for him, he needs that. He has to have that. So at the end of the day, I have to make it happen.
What I attribute to my success is this program. It's my sponsor. Because I've had my family as a support team, but who can you go to in your family with a black eye and say, Mom, I need help, and then you're right back with them 2 weeks later? It's not going to happen. Moms, look, I'm tired. I'm done. My sponsor, my case managers are people who have came into my life and showed me a better place and have showed me that I don't have to live with abuse. I don't have to live with agony. I'm not afraid to get up and comb my hair, because at one point in time, for example, he didn't want me to comb my hair. He didn't want me to, because if I looked at atrocious, no one else wanted me. Today, I can comb my hair, put on my wigs, do my face, because I choose to. If I choose not to comb my hair, it's my choice today. It's not his choice. And I've taken my power back. And taking my power back is the most important thing to me.
There isn't so much of a stigma. There shouldn't be so much of a stigma, because like with my situation, it was a series of unfortunate events and it wasn't anybody's fault. And I feel like that's a big stigma. People who have see people who don't have and say, well, what did they do to get there? And they need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. And a lot of people that are in that position are doing the best that they can. And they are trying to take advantage of what they have. Well, from my experience, what I've seen. So I definitely want people to know that if you see somebody who's struggling, give them the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes people like me, I always tell D4L, anybody I come in contact with, like, I just needed a little bit of a boost. I work for everything I have have no problem putting in the work. I know how this world is. You know what I mean? So erase that stigma of these people aren't trying or they deserve to be in that position, because you don't know what got them there and you don't know what they're doing to get out of that position.
And what people don't understand about homelessness is that We're beautiful people. We are people of standard, people of value. Some of us got up on the wrong track. My personal case is I allowed a man, because I was afraid, I was of the unknown. I didn't want to be by myself. And that was the biggest fear, being by myself. But he had broke my self-esteem. He had broke my pride. He had broke my joy. He broke my sobriety. He had allowed me to go to places that when I was on drugs, I had never been. And with that being said, I'm homeless because I want a better life for my kids. And if this is what I have to endure to see a bigger picture with a better home, a better future, I'm willing to take it. Me and my kids can sleep on the floor in here and be happy. We're together. We're loved. We don't have the abuse. I still have my own mental issues, but I work through them. My children help me, and I love them, and I appreciate them for that.
It's hard. It's everything that it's chalked up to be. You see the guy standing on the side of the street, and you don't know whether or not you're gonna get shit. I mean, if you have a job, you know where your next food is gonna be. You have money coming in, but you just don't know where you're gonna shower, where you're gonna lay your head down at night. Like when you see people, you see them dirty, and you see them like struggling. Like, what do you think really is like? It's horrible. Nobody wants to be without a house. Nobody wants to be without a pillow or a blanket. Nobody wants to be in white clothes and dirty and smelly. Nobody wants to be judged because that is their lifestyle for right now. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to be here. And if it can change, then people thought of being like people being homeless in a different way, the world would be a better place. The world would be different. It's cruel out here. It really is. People make fun of people for being homeless. It's not something to make fun of. It's people at their lowest. And you just make them lower if you don't understand where they're coming from. Like you have to the saying, walk a mile in somebody else's shoes, and then you really would understand. Like it's really hard. It was really hard.
I'm Avery Sliker, and I'm the Director of Quality and Performance Improvement for the Homeless Leadership Alliance. I'd like you to take a moment and close your eyes. Think back to when you first walked in the room. When you heard the word homeless, how many of you immediately pictured an older white gentleman with a scraggly beard that's dirty? Go ahead and raise your hand if that's what you saw. It's okay, eyes are closed, I'm checking. Okay, gently open your eyes. My hope is that after meeting Precious and Leah and Lizette, that you now have a very different picture of homelessness in Pinellas County. Was there anything that surprised you in the video? Anything that you'd like to share that you saw? What I hope is that since you've now seen and met friends, that what you see when you see homelessness are neighbors without home. I hope what you see are beautiful people. I'm extremely fortunate with what I do for the Homeless Leadership Alliance. I get to collect stories. Whether those stories are personal or professional or even data. I get to collect all those stories so that we can share them with you and let you know what's going on with the state of homelessness in Pinellas. Case management, we're told, is simply about assessing, planning, and monitoring. That's what a case manager does. In the stories that I collect from the case managers, that's only a very extremely small fraction of their day. A housing case manager in Pinellas County walks hand in hand each day with our clients on their journey to find a home. They, from the moment they wake up until sometimes way past we all go to bed, they are planning, they are assessing, but they are also gathering facts. They are filling in gaps. The support that they provide is being an advocate for voices that aren't heard or are often ignored. Housing case managers in Pinellas County provide transportation daily, provide delivery services and the means of picking up prescriptions and dropping them off. They help families enroll their kids in school and make sure that the busing routes are right. They're finding housing, they're helping fill out applications. They're helping navigate through eviction. They're navigating an extremely complex system of care. They coach, they mediate. And once someone does find a home, they then become property managers and even maintenance. I am so very fortunate to have contact and collect the stories of these courageous individuals and human beings that serve our neighbors without homes each and every day. And it is my great honor to be the person that introduces for you tonight a day in the life of a housing case manager in Pinellas County.
My name is Kathy Ham, and I'm a homeless outreach specialist with Directions for Living. Our job is to go out into the community and meet face to face with people that are on the street, literally homeless. So that will be, determining how long they've been out on the street. What are their needs? Some of the causes of what that brought them out onto the street. And then we're going to advocate to get them into the proper shelter or program that they need. Do they need drug rehab? Do they need detox right away? Are they getting mental health treatment? Do they have family that we can do diversion and get them with family? Do we need to do diversion to pay bills that they can go back home to their family somewhere? We do assessments for housing. Is there housing needs, which the majority need? So we'll do those assessments. Referrals to get into shelters. Detox programs, drug, those are the things that we do. Some of the things that we do is transportation. Do they need clothes to get to work? Are they employed? Do they need referrals over to employment agencies, housing agencies? Do they need hygiene because they're working now and they need those things to be clean when they're out on the street? Medical care, are they getting medical care? So when's the last time they saw the doctor? Are they getting cancer treatments and now they need transportation to get to those cancer treatment programs? Or do they need applications that help them get Blue Card so that they can get medical care? Helping them apply or get linked into a program that helps them apply for their disability. So maybe they're at an age to where they're not quite ready to retire, but they're broken down just because of everything they've had to experience, either substance abuse, mental health, or just even physical labor. So it's, you know, it's a wide variety of services that we try to get them into in a collaboration of what programs are suitable for them out in the community. And at this time, I've been doing street outreach with directions for 10 months. So there's never a same day on street outreach. Every day is different. So like today, for instance, we arrive at the soup kitchen. As soon as we get out of the car, we have snacks that are donated to directions. So they're rushing up to the car, they're assisting me to empty the trunk, and then the homeless people literally help each other, hand else out. So it's like, Kathy, can I help you? So they'll hand out those snack bags so that they get to participate in that. So they're also helping each other. So within, it's just a lot of people coming up because they want bus passes. They've got places that they go. Might not seem a lot to some people, but that $2.50 for that bus pass is a lot when they're out on the street. And us being able to give them that $2.50 bus pass means that they're not out panhandling, or the girls aren't out doing things that they probably don't want to be doing because they need money. That's one of the things, is trying to get services out so we can curtail some of those behaviors or things that they have to do when they're out on the street. But they'll come up because we have one that needs to go to cancer treatment at Largo Medical Center. So he sees me on a pretty frequent basis. We have them that want to go up to Tarpon Springs because they can go up to the Shepherd Center in Tarpon Springs and they can go up and get clothing. They can go up to the food bank because they'll have encampments maybe out in places in the city, and they need food that they can take back to their homes on the street. So then they'll come to me because they're going to look for jobs. So we have lists of temp agencies within the Clearwater area. So I can give them a list of those temp agencies, kind of gives them leads of where they can get employment right away. And then we'll give them a bus pass so that they can get there. Some of them are wanting referrals to shelter. We had one that was taken down for a shelter today, wasn't accepted. I can't get him into another. So we're calling around to try to find places to get him, and the officer is going back to pick him up to transport him to a shelter somewhere. So it's those phone calls that just kind of, we have to throw in the midst of everything else that we're doing. People that want referrals, they put on wait lists, but maybe they don't have a phone. So we're giving out, information. You contact me. So keep in touch with me. People that I waited to see today that, didn't come and will stay a little longer because maybe they'll show up. Maybe they're maybe nervous about coming, or they're having difficulty coming. So we'll wait a little longer. And then we had a meeting shortly thereafter to go to for the Going Home Project. And that's one of the churches that work with us in Clearwater, one of our faith-based programs to help people get diversion. They pay for bus tickets, plane tickets, train tickets, so that we can get them back with family so that they're off the street. So we'll, the phone's constantly ringing while we're talking to people, and you're trying to get them services, where can they go? What can they do? So that's just part of a day. It's just a piece of some of the stuff that we get to do while we're out there, and they're so nice. The people that we meet out there they're just amazing. The strength that they have and endurance for what they go through when they're out on the street is just, they're just amazing out there. So that's part of the day. And it really takes a village to help these people. So the number of programs that we're starting to collaborate with is growing at a steady rate. So we may get things from the soup kitchen, working with them on housing, getting them IDs, getting birth certificates ordered through the refuge program, getting clothing from, if they have it at the thrift store, through Salvation Army or Goodwill, going with bowling for housing. So we may have a lady that's in a shelter for domestic violence. Now she's being discharged because her time's up, but she's got nowhere to go. So then we're reaching out to Bowley for housing. In the meantime, we've got the St. Vincent de Paul Soup Kitchen that's paying now for a hotel because she's going to be out on the street with those children and she doesn't have anywhere else to go because maybe she fled another state to get away from her offender. So now she's down here with nobody. So now we're all that she has. So that relationship that we're developing with her and the collaboration of the different programs. So maybe we had a family, the mom could get into housing, but she couldn't take her child that just turned 18. So now we're working with the Going Home Project so that we got him now placed back with family in the state that she came from. So now we have her down here and her children are housed, but she has that other child now, he's safe too. So he didn't have to go to a shelter. So it's those collaboration of those different programs that we're pulling in that it shows that the community that we really care as a community about the people that live in our community, that these are people that are at one point were very active and contributing factors. They were contributing residents of our town, but now they come on hard times, and for whatever reason, substance abuse, the economy, whatever's pushing them out into the streets, we're able to help them so that we can get them back to where they should have been, just living lives in housing, that everybody has a right to be housed. So that's, that housing first, getting people where they need to be in housing and not just shelters that are temporary. But that collaboration of our community, it's making it happen. When you're out here working with the homeless, is you have to have compassion. You can't take anything that happens out there personal. I mean, there's days that they want to vent and they will take every piece of anger they have out on you because you're that person they're depending on to assist. We may not have all the answers. We may not have all the resources. We may not, because funding is so short out there that we don't have funding for enough shelters. We don't have enough funding for mental health or substance abuse treatment to get it out on the street where they are. Services have to come to them. But you have to envision that every person that you meet out on that street could be a family member. It could be your mom. It could be your child. That child that's sleeping in a car or sleeping in a tent could be my grandkid. That could be a family member that I have that has mental health issues or substance abuse. So you have to envision those people that you're helping could be your own family, because it's not happening to just people that you assume has major mental health issues or substance abuse issues and they're never going to change because they want that to happen. This is happening to people that never expected it to happen. They never expected to get into their midlife and start going through mental health that they didn't have before, or to be kicked out of their home, or to have that senior citizen apartment that they were living on, that they expected to live their golden years in that apartment, and suddenly it's sold. And now their income doesn't meet that need, and they're finding themselves in a tent. So when you're referring that senior citizen to go live in that tent, you got to think about what kind of services they're getting. What are they going to get when they get there? But you have to envision that these are people that you know, because it's happening. It's happening to our neighbors. It's happening to our coworkers, to city officials, the employees of the cities, our coworkers, because their rent's going up, or they are work at high stress level jobs like we do, to where maybe they're having a bad time and they turn to substances. So it's people that we know. So when we're out there, you have to have compassion. You have to think that it could be anybody. It could be us. Our economy is getting to where it could be us at any time. So can't judge. No judgment out on the street. There's no judgment of what brought them out there. It's my judgment as if I'm giving them the right services. That's what they need.
I'm so glad that you guys clapped. I wish Kathy was here with us. There's so many meetings where Kathy's name comes up. You can tell that wasn't scripted. She is the real deal out there making a difference every day. I know there's so many people in this room that are also doing that work, which is not easy. So I hope that gave you a picture of how every day is a little bit different. Now we've come to the most important part of our meeting, which is to hear from you. So some folks did submit questions in advance. We also have public comment cards over on the table. If anyone wants to speak, you have 3 minutes. If you want to fill out a card and bring it over to Brianna, we'll get you in the queue. We wanted to make sure our board members had representation here tonight and had the ability to participate in the evening. And I missed our local representative, Councilmember Fick Sanders, so much. I thought since we were in St. Pete, it would be nice for her to be our MC. So she and I are gonna kind of collaborate on this. I promised her she wouldn't have to answer any of the tough questions. I'd do that for her if she just worked on keeping us flowing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Fick Sanders.
Thank you, everybody. And I have my cell phone with my timer on it. So we will definitely stay. You have timer? Okay, so we're definitely going to stay in line with the time constraints. And I don't know how many questions we're actually going to be allowed to have. And hopefully that you do have questions, but as an elected official, as I stood and I watched the videos and as I looked into those faces, the one thing that really stood out to me was the young lady that even through the flow of tears, her positive mindset is, we're only in this situation right now. She didn't condemn herself to be there forever. She didn't condemn all of her days to be dark. She didn't condemn herself to actually know that there's no other options or no other opportunities. So for those that are here today, I thank you for being here. I thank you for your commitment to want to find answers to how do we end homelessness. So I know, I want to say Councilmember Foster, but she's no longer on council anymore. I miss her so much. I really would. But I know you said you had some questions.
I do. So again, it's your turn to talk, but we figured you may need a few minutes to get primed. So I'll start off with something that was submitted in advance. And if folks online have questions, we will alternate back and forth. So feel free to submit your questions online and we'll get to those as well. So one of the questions that came in was, how do we assist homeless single men or women with no military affiliation with housing? So the first step for anybody who needs assistance is to get an assessment. The way that you get an assessment is to present at a shelter or through street outreach. If the person who submitted this question happens to be a service provider and you are not able to conduct assessments and you would like to, you can reach out to Avery Sliker in the back. Her email is aslyker@hlapinellas.org, and we can discuss what it would take to become certified to be able to provide assessments. So really that's the first step. There's a long journey, but everybody that comes into the system needs that assessment to get on what we call the by name list in order to qualify for housing. So I don't know if the person who asked that question is in the room or not. Hopefully that answered it for you. Let's see what we have coming up here, Deb.
Okay. Well, we have one that says, okay, here's a question, and this is Lord. I understand that returning citizens are not eligible for Section 8 housing. To what extent can they find a place to live? So that's not one I have an answer to, but I will tell you someone that will probably, who is not here, I don't know if Mike Delazzo is here, who is actually the executive director of PERC, that will be able to assist you. And one of the wonderful things about this is that in your participation of this and having 211, Mr. Thompson in the room, and other people in the room that have been with COC and HLA, is that you have the connection, you have the liaison. So if we don't have an answer, we do know that those that do have an answer, so hopefully that works. The next question is, how do you get a homeless person a case manager? Is there a case manager that would like to answer that question? Case managers?
I would say it's the same as getting housing, right? The first step for everybody is they need to get an assessment. And the way that you get that assessment is to present at shelter. You want to speak up?
I was just saying, you guys, you're referring to going to a shelter or being on the by name list. So you talk about clarifying, you actually need to be street homeless, right? Like not about to be next week, not only the time, you literally have to be street homeless.
Correct. So for those who are online and may not have heard the person in the back, our system prioritizes people who are literally homeless. That means folks who are living on the street, not doubled up, not in hotels. And so those who are literally homeless should receive a VI SPDAT assessment in order to start receiving services.
Thank you. And the next question is, I'm new to Pinellas County and I'm not sure how to find a VI SPDAT assessment provider.
I think we just answered that.
Okay.
So another question about housing, is there a central location for citizens who are on the verge of homelessness due to rent increase to apply for all applicable dwelling units? And unfortunately, there is no central place in our community where that can happen. Not only do we not have a central intake system like some communities do, we also don't have a place where you could apply once and then be accepted by any landlord. All of our landlords, we do manage a list, so do many providers in the system of landlords they work with. All of them have different requirements and criteria. And so, you know, that is really determined by the market at this time. However, I will tell you that in Nashville recently, they started something called the Landlord Collective, and they used ARPA dollars to incentivize landlords to come into the system and fill out paperwork and agree to work with certain criteria. We are trying to see if we can get a presentation to our funders from the group that founded that in Nashville. And some of our funders have already said to me, they'd be interested in getting something like that going here. So whenever we have more information on that, we'll definitely share that with the community. I still don't think it'll be a centralized application process.
Thank you. Here's the next question. Does Pinellas provide incentives for landlords to help with housing the homeless persons like Hillsborough?
That's a great question. So all of the dollars are usually have lots of stipulations and strings from our funders. So it depends on the funding source, but many funding sources are allowing incentives. I know in some cases we are providing 3 and 5 times the move-in costs that is needed in order for a landlord to be willing to work with somebody who maybe has some additional barriers like previous evictions. But it varies a little bit with every program.
Does anyone, I see your hand, does anyone have a card that they've completed and would like your question read? Are you all smart? You got it together, right?
It doesn't have to be a question. It can be comments about what you want to see happen here.
Okay, so if you hold that, I did see your hand first.
I was just gonna get started off in this room and ask what you would recommend people do if they want to advocate for affordable housing.
Great question. So if you want to advocate for affordable housing, I would get familiar with your local jurisdiction and understand what's going on there. You know, every community has something a little bit different going on. In St. Petersburg, they have a housing land use committee. All of those committee meetings are aired online. So even if you're not able to attend in person, you can keep up with that information by watching recordings. I know there's other groups I see in the room. I know Mr. Scott is with the Sierra Club. They've done some advocacy. I see Celebrate Outreach and some other groups as well. So there's lots of groups to get involved in that can help make a difference in that area.
And on the local level, we don't, as elected officials, don't always know what we know. And you're talking about sometimes a somber feeling of helplessness. We don't know what we don't know, but it is with the advocacy of those with the expertise that intentionally seek us out to have those conversations to say, hey, this is what we have citywide, but this is what we know would help our homeless. This is what we need. And a lot of times that's where we get our direction from, or from you, you know, to let us know exactly what your feedback is for us to advocate and fight for. And so that's very critical for me to hopefully get you to understand is that all of our elected officials, we're here for you. And we're supposed to be addressing those type of issues. So having and getting in contact with us is another way or great way to advocate for homelessness. Yes, ma'am, your question.
Victoria bring her the microphone. I'm an elected official too, and in Gulfport, we have a few people who are chronically homeless, and we've been taking them to shelters. We've tried introducing them to social programs, and yeah, it's not working. And so people complain that there's not many options. You know, certainly you don't want to arrest people and like that. And I'm just wondering if there's a plan to make more shelters, because sometimes, especially from Gulfport, you know, the shelters are fairly far away and they don't necessarily want to have to go that far, because if they really want to be in Gulfport in the daytime, it's hard transferring back and forth. And so I'm just wondering if there's more shelters being planned in different areas.
Great question, Councilmember Dennis. So HUD does not fund shelters. So if there were going to be new shelters for our community, that would be up to the local community to fund.
Is the county doing anything for that, or you know?
The county does provide, you know, significant dollars to the homeless system. Off the top of my head, I don't know how much they're providing to shelter providers, but we certainly recognize and advocate for the need of different shelters than what we currently have in the system.
So I do have another question. I'm trying to work someone else's laptop, so let me navigate it a little bit. Okay, so the next question is, how do I find out of all the outreach specialist programs in Pinellas County to connect with? I am an outreach specialist and work with ages 6 to 24, and I'm having a hard time. Let me see.
Yeah, that is the right one. Having a hard time finding ways to support their youth.
Having a hard time finding ways to support their youth. We have a drop-in center where they can find resources and use whatever services we offer, like laundry, computers, lounge area, job application support, etc.
So the only street outreach provider in our community is Directions for Living, who you saw on the video. They are funded by the county. Is it 4 communities?
By the county, 5 in total.
5 in total. So we can put some contact information in the chat for you. Certainly other programs that are not connected to the homeless system may also have outreach providers, but the official system of care outreach provider for Pinellas County is Directions for Living. I also saw someone ask about risk mitigation funds for landlords. We do have a risk mitigation fund.
Amy, can you also say to that question though, about Providers Council, that we, being a part of this COC as a member and ultimately getting involved in the Providers Council would allow that agency to get very familiar with street outreach and have a support?
Yes, great point, April. So we do have a Providers Council, which Victoria's going to talk a little bit in a few minutes about ways to get involved in the system. There is a robust Providers Council that meets every other month and then has subgroups as needed to focus on things like changing our assessment. That is really the best way to know all the resources. I know somebody wrote in advance saying, is there an opportunity for resource sharing? Many people have changed jobs and have lost contact with their former contacts. We do have updated homeless resource guides that are in the back of the room. We hope you'll take home today. You can also request them off of our website and we'll get them delivered to you, or you can pick them up from our office. We do host regular informal networking events. The last one was virtual because we were seeing a spike in COVID. We can certainly do that again as folks are changing in the system. So we'll go ahead and get another one of those on the calendar for everybody.
So we have one question here that is saying, where can we send the homeless client when all the shelters are full, especially if the client is North St. Pete?
So typically, individual shelter is never full. In our system, the individual shelters almost always have space. If you're talking about families, then they would need to call 211 and get an assessment for the shelter prioritization list. But you have to remember there's 60 families sitting on that list right now. So an overnight solution. The city of St. Pete just put $2.5 million forward to do additional non-congregate shelter units at hotel. Our school board system is also putting money on the table to address this. The county has added some dollars recently. It's still not enough. So first step for a family is call 211. They will get transferred to the homeless hotline and get the shelter prioritization assessment. For individuals, they would likely present at Safe Harbor or St. Vincent de Paul or one of the other shelter providers. Kathleen?
Yeah, I was gonna say, so I'm on Clearwater City Council, I'm Kathleen Beckman. I was gonna speak to April's question about homeless cycling in and out. And what I'm learning is that, if we're talking mostly about Safe Harbor, they may go to Safe Harbor, but they don't stay there because they don't get get appropriate services. And so a lot of people with a dual diagnosis of mental health, trauma, substance abuse, anything like that, the case management ratio, and please jump in and correct me if I get my numbers wrong, is supposed to be 12-1. And at Safe Harbor, is it like 180-1?
It's 80-1.
80, oh, 80-1. It's supposed to be 12-1 for a dual diagnosis. And so people aren't getting what they need up there, and so they're cycling in and out. I know that we have 24 municipalities in the county, and not all municipalities are shipping in money to help our county-wide challenges with the homeless. I think if you're asking what you should do, look to your local elected body and say, are you chipping in with Safe Harbor and Pinellas Hope and Directions for Living and Street Outreach, St. Vincent de Paul, and all these other organizations that are doing the heavy lift? Because if your electeds, your form of government, wherever you are, Treasure Island, Gulfport, Bel Air Beach, Bel Air Bluffs, Bel Air Shores, you need to pony up some money and get some skin in the game and help out. Because these 3 or 4 municipalities that are contributing, and mine is not contributing enough, and I am pushing actively to get more money, can't do it all. And there is a gaping hole in funding. And so if you expect change, it costs money. And these case managers, Kathy Ham, the woman who works in Clearwater, is doing amazing work. I've done 2 ride-alongs with her. I was in that meeting. We were in that little video thing. Her heart is in the right place. She has incredible talent and connection, and we need to pay people to do that work. The case managers are not valued enough, you know, monetarily. We need to put money for good people and keep them here and get more of them, because they're in the trenches doing that work and making a difference. And, you know, things aren't going to get better unless there's money put in it for good people who are doing the good work.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Did you have a question, Ms. Jones?
No, man.
You good? Okay, so another question is, are there any groups or meetings specific for housing case managers so we can share information with one another?
Yes, there is, and Kaylee is gonna put the contact information in the chat so that you can get in touch with the person who runs those.
She just put it in there, the resource guide, the resource guide information. Okay, here's another question. Has there been a recent meeting with local landlords and companies that own apartment complexes to discuss the raise in rent and high deposit requests? Is there still a stipulation for new? This is for new complexes to offer certain amount of units for low income. So let me read that last question. Is there still a stipulation for new complexes to offer a certain amount of units for low income? I can answer on the city level that if it is a private development, no, we are not required. They are not required, nor can we control. The only impact that we would have on that developer would be through codes and permitting. If it is anything that has, like, for example, we now have our community benefits agreement of anything $2 million or over, where the city provides any type of assistance, incentives or land, then there are other 3 tiers of obligations that they're supposed to do for affordable housing only. Any other apartments, development, affordable housing, any city assistance, we do have the opportunity in our term agreements, to negotiate the number of units. Personally, I'm glad that Amy showed that slide of that, as they said, what is that, the missing section of the 30%, the 80% and under. Originally, when I first started on council, everything was 120% AMI. Everything that was coming before us was 120% AMI. So when we look at the lower AMIs, I can say for this council member, I'm looking more at the number of units, 80% AMI and below. And I'm just so encouraged by Mayor Roach that actually hired Rob Burtis, who's now a city administrator. But the intent of the current administration to focus more on affordable housing. Whatever that looks like, we're gonna help them get there. And again, with questions like these, just help us get direction as to where we need to focus on. Do we want to ask one more question? I have 649. Okay. Do you have a mobile crisis response team?
So Homeless Services does not have a mobile crisis response team, but mental health does. And so we can definitely share that information in the chat. Okay, we're gonna turn it over, Amy.
May I?
Yes.
Can I just project?
Yep.
Hello, my name is James Scott. I'm with the Suncoast Sierra Club. I live in South St. Pete. So we are an environmental advocacy organization, and as we evolve, you know, we as an organization have a bad history of putting the planet over people. So the idea of environmental justice is about organizations like mine working on issues like this one. And so I just want to speak to that. We do a lot of organizing and conservation work, but political advocacy, advocating for budgets and policies that affect people in the environment. That's what we do. And this is a convoluted public discourse. A lot of people see homelessness and it's like, it's a brick wall. It's confusing. Like, what do we do? And Amy, you said 7.7 billion, I recall, as a price tag to meet our needs, like originally. That is profound. And how do you start with that? Where do you go with that? And so as we, you know, there's issues like housing and density and land use. So there's lots of, so like that's kind of a piece of the pie that the Sierra Club, for example, can engage on. But at the end of the day, it's about funding. And thank you, council member from Clearwater. You know, and my question is, and I'm kind of a comment / question, it's about political will. You know, to get the political will to invest in the resources, it's going to require and start with public support. And so the public has to ask for it and demand it first. And so the conversation is so difficult and convoluted. How can the public be engaged? And already we have a societal issue with stigma, and I think there's not judging folks. There's a lot of judgment out there around this issue. And so as we break down the stigma, we talk about the solutions. It's about money. And so I don't know how much work y'all do. You know, I'm imagining there's a role that's played trying not to irritate any elected officials because we want to get their funding. However, organizations like mine, that's our job. And so if we're going to meet with elected officials and saying, hey, like these are the issues that we care about, and these are the solutions that we're looking for, and oh, by the way, we can't wait to see you at the next election cycle, what are we asking for specifically? And starting with 7.7 billion and the different AMI levels and where the housing is really needed, we're so far from that. And so I guess if you could just speak, maybe either of you or both, to the political, you both have been elected, or current elected official, the politics of it. How do we galvanize public support and make these big asks and insist on it? This is a moral crisis and a tangible crisis, and we're all just like, nobody cares. And obviously we care, and you care. But how do we engage with the issue of building public support, building political will, and ultimately getting the funding, which is a multi-billion dollar number? I think that should be the thing that galvanizes all of us, is that this is a very expensive, you know, enacting our morals and our principles requires funding sometimes. This is one of those issues where we've so thoroughly failed. So can please speak to that? Thank you.
So irritated public officials really shouldn't be a thing, because that's why we're there. And this public official appreciates the contact, because as I stated before, we don't know what we don't know. The politics that I've experienced is you have to have the priority of multiple council members that want to see the same thing, to get to the same end game in order for it to move forward. But the advocacy portion of it, I've seen where the council chambers are full. And you have people come and speak up on behalf of what they need and what they want to see done. I've seen more responses, I've seen more progression, I've seen more progress in trying to convince those that originally didn't hear them before they got in council chambers. The political bureaucracy, and I guess I need to be politically correct.
Take your filter off.
It comes from the top down, right? It comes from the top down, and it's all about priorities for administration. But as a council member, I still remember that, and keep in mind that your voice is, you know how they say the squeaky wheel gets the oil? No one likes to have you continuously, because just like I have this mic in my hand, Amy will tell you, I use it on a regular. I don't always say what they want to hear, but only the reason why that I can do that is because I have people like you to help share that information and to circulate it and to fight what we think is important. The housing issue is huge. You already know that. And it's not going to be a quick solution. Homelessness is not a quick issue. You know, it's not going to happen overnight. But the more people that hear you, the further an issue will be able to be carried.
Yeah, I mean, James, I would say that one of the things I think is so amazing about this moment is in some parts of Pinellas County, we are seeing that, right? People have had a sustained pressure applied to elected officials, and you're seeing that make a difference. What was originally suggested for ARPA is not where it ended up, right? And so I think that constant telling of stories, putting a face to it, definitely makes a difference. If I had anything to say, I know everybody in this room isn't from St. Pete, and we need those voices activated in Clearwater and in Tarpon Springs and in Palm Harbor. Homelessness is not unique to St. Petersburg, and it's not unique to our big city centers. You know, we have Gulfport here, they're having an issue. We've been meeting with Treasure Island. 30 to 40% of homeless people in Pinellas County do not come from St. Pete, Clearwater, the major cities. And so I would say to those in the room from North County and from other parts of our community, take a look at what's happening in South County and try to replicate that in your own area.
And again, I have to concur. The original Aqua dollar amount has changed, but also what else has changed? Administration, the focus from the top down.
What does ARPA stand for?
American Rescue Plan Act. Great question. Thank you. We use so many acronyms. Thank you so much, Councilmember Big Sanders. And she handled that beautifully. So now we're going to turn it over to Victoria Kelly, who is going to wrap us up by telling us ways that folks can get involved to make a difference.
Thank you very much, Katie. That was fantastic. I'm so glad that I didn't have to answer all those questions. So we're going to talk about membership in the Continuum of Care. Now, because we are at a Continuum of Care meeting, I'm guessing that most people in the room are familiar with the term. But I have to tell you, as somebody who goes out there and talks about the COC, which is Continuum of Care, by the way, most people are not. Most people, even who do the work, have never heard the term. So what's the COC? Who can join it? Amy talked about what we do. You know, we tried really hard to make sure that we are doing the work. We are out there giving people what they need, where they need it, when they need it. And who's a part of the COC? Anybody who lives, works in, or serves Pinellas County. You can be a member, your brother can be a member, you know, your neighbor, your friend who lives in Hillsborough but works here. Absolutely, tell them to join. So we're going to talk about people who have experienced homelessness. We have members who have a lived homeless experience, because I can talk about this until I'm blue in the face, but that's not my experience, and we need people with that experience to be in the room where decisions are being made. Who else? Nonprofit organizations, homeless service providers, religious and spiritual organizations, government agencies. We do have a few city council members here, and thankfully, I'm happy to say they are members of the COC. Local businesses. You don't have to be involved in homeless services to be a member of the COC. You can just want to support what we do. So we're going to talk, or we have hospitals, churches, universities can be members, local governments, housing authorities, affordable housing developers, landlords. Do y'all know any landlords? Does anybody in this room know a landlord? Raise your hand. Has anybody talked to them about joining the COC or affordable housing? Because we should be bringing them into the conversation. Legal aid entities, libraries, where do people go? They go to the library, food pantry, all of these awesome places doing great work are members of the COC or can be members of the COC. Okay, we can move on to the next one. All right, so why should you join the Continuum of Care? Because it helps lighten the load. Because we are trying to do the work and we need help. Nobody can do this on their own. We have to work together to achieve what we are trying to do, to end homelessness. I like to say that Continuum of Care is a little bit like, instead of us all trying to push 20 boulders up the same hill, we all kind of stop, work together on pushing the same boulder up. We are all trying to end homelessness. So let's do it together. What else? Access Continuum of Care resources. We have talked about Providers Council and case conferencing. If you are a member of the Continuum of Care and you are working with somebody who you just can't figure out how to help, you can reach out to the COC. There are ways that we can work together to help people. Funding, that's a big one. Get help with funding. Share information, share resources. Those homeless resource guides in the back, those are fantastic. Get your organization listed in them. Get those guides and share them with people. And connect with like-minded people. The other day, I was at an event with two wonderful volunteers, one of whom is here today. And I have to tell you, having the opportunity to sit down with two people who are just good neighbors, who just care about people, they just want to make a difference. That was fantastic. I love talking to people who care about other people. And getting to work with people like that is awesome. So there's just some of the reasons to join. Generally, help the community, help us end homelessness. Next slide. So some of the benefits of membership. Now, there are a couple of handouts. They both look a little bit like this. One of them is going to talk about the benefits of membership, the types of membership and everything like that. I want to make sure that everybody has that. But reasons to join the COC. Vote for leadership. Do you want to have a say in homeless services, in the future of homeless services? Because this is how you do it. You join the COC and you vote for our board members. Get updates, advocacy alerts. You want to know what's going on? Join the COC. Get included in that guidebook that we just talked about. Participate in committees and councils. We have quite a few committees and councils. I won't go through all of them here, but I will tell you that, for instance, we have an advocacy committee who advocate for people experiencing or at risk of homelessness. We have the Providers Council, where providers can get together and talk about what they need, how they can get things done, and how they can move forward doing the work that they have to do. The Point in Time Planning Committee, we have all kinds of great opportunities for you to get involved. We also have educational opportunities and trainings that come up. I know that on June 6th, there will be a training for race equity and homelessness. So inclusion in events like that and opportunities like that are a big benefit to membership. Next slide. How do you join the CSE? Now, this one's really complicated. You have to go to one website and click one button. From there, you just fill it in. So you go to our website. It's right up there. You go to pinellashomeless.org/PinellasCOC. There are a few different membership types that you can choose from. You click that out, or you click that, you fill it out. That comes to me. It's reviewed by our wonderful COC and HLA leadership. Pay your membership dues, attend at least 2 meetings. This counts as one of them. And that's it. You're a member of the Continuum of Care, and you have access to all of those COC resources that we've just talked about. That's all you have to do. And then annually, you do have to renew. So that's really the Continuum of Care. Before I turn this over, though, I do want to give people the opportunity to, because I know that might have been a lot of information that we went over rather quickly. Does anybody have any questions about that? No? Everybody's feeling good? Okay. Well, in that case, I am going to go ahead and turn us over to look ahead. Mr. Hayes?
Thank you. Looking ahead, I guess when you're chair, they give you the easy job, which is welcoming and announcements. Do we have a slide on this, or? So Debbie Johnson, for most of you in this room, knew her well, but she recently passed away, and part of that we wanted to honor her advocacy and dedication to the COC and the community, housing community as a whole. So we created a memorial award, and that will be open again for the second annual on August 1st. Nominations will be open August 1st to the 31st. So if you know somebody, go on the HLA website and you can check out, there's a form, a nomination form, and selection committee, and to honor basically a housing or homeless advocate in the community. Last year was Gary McMahon from Foley, well deserving. What do we got up next? Oh, important dates. So for all the providers in the room, our notice of funding opportunity, NOFA, Mandatory Bidders Conference on the 26th tomorrow, 2 p.m. Applications are due on June 10th. So if you're a homeless service provider providing any services and you want to apply for the NOFA, June 10th is the deadline. That's important. Write it down. June 6th, as already mentioned, our 9 a.m. race equity in homelessness. Please RSVP by June 1st. This is super important. We did it last year. We're doing it again annually. This is a really deep dive into the race equity data within the homeless continuum of care, what we're doing on and toolkit, and we'll be rolling out our toolkit. But what we're doing as a COC and as a community to really address these systemic issues that we see in homelessness, especially with minority populations. Next. Future meetings, August 17th. We have our other membership meeting. I'm looking over here, November 4th, COC elections. Victoria mentioned as part of being a member of the COC, you elect the board. And that's a super important meeting on the 4th. You can register, November 4th, you can register at pinellashomeless.org/PinellasCOC. September 5th, our applications for COC board of directors will close. So if you want to be on the board, if you want to make a difference on that kind of level, if you feel like you have an asset to bring to the COC, especially at a board level, we'd love to have your application. And just as importantly, if you know somebody that may want to get on board, I can tell you right now, our board has a real focus of looking at representation, of representing the community and the homeless community specifically. So if you know somebody who may want to get involved at that level or would be good to get involved at that level, please have them apply. And lastly, we have our homeless, I believe this is lastly, homeless resource guide, digital guides available. You can see up there. We also have guides in the back right corner. Take some. If you're hand them out, give them. I always have a couple with me, so I don't have to call Amy. But please, that's a function in the COC, and there's a lot of great resources that you can hand to somebody or just keep at your desk. To request future guides, you can go to the link below. I don't think there's any more announcements. With that, I just want to say again, as the chair of the COC, on behalf of the COC, the board and the membership, thank you sincerely for taking the time tonight. Everybody could be a lot of different places right now, but this is a super important issue. So thank you for being here in person, on Zoom, taking the time, and we look forward to engaging and working with each and every one of you as we move forward to end homelessness in your community. So thank you and have a good evening.
And then real quick, homeless resource guides are over there. Please make sure that you sign for them. I have to have a log of how many are taken in my home. So please make sure that you sign for them. If you've already pre-registered for them, they do have your name on them. And then also, please make sure that you have signed in, because that is the only way that I can keep attendance. So please make sure that you've signed in.